Thank you so much, Christine and Tigran, for inviting me. I'm really sorry I couldn't make it in person at the last minute. Got ill the other day. Anyway, I'm from NOAA's Office of Response and Restoration, the Assessment and Restoration Program, and we are the ones who do natural resource damage assessment at oil spills. So my background is not marine mammals, so if you're expecting a lot of expertise on marine mammals themselves, don't ask me. However, I did lead the marine mammal group for Deepwater Horizon. I've learned a lot, but I'm really going to be talking about this from the damage assessment point of view. So hopefully this is helpful for all of us. This isn't. Oh, here we go. All right. So what I'm going to try to cover in my 20 minutes is a little bit on natural resource damage assessment basics. I'm going to try to avoid acronyms. A few thoughts on just marine mammal assessments in general. I'll talk about the Deepwater Horizon marine mammal assessment and kind of some thoughts for post-Deepwater. What are we thinking with marine mammal assessment? And I really am happy that Liz talked about the response side, because that's a great introduction and segue. So natural resource damages are one component of a pollution case. Other parts, on the legal end are the response and cleanup, which that's the side Liz was talking about with wildlife response. There's penalties from Clean Water Act and then other third-party claims. But NRDA is its own liability for resolving. The Natural Resource Damage Assessment Authorities I'm talking about today are from the Oil Pollution Act, although there's other laws that come into play depending on the circumstances, including some states have their own statutes that have some NRDA components. The trustees under Oil Pollution Act are states where a state may designate one or more agencies as natural resource trustees. And on the federal side, there's U.S. Department of Interior and their bureaus, as well as NOAA, USDA. Mainly, we're thinking of the Forest Service there, Department of Defense, and then federally recognized tribes, territories, and foreign governments, which a lot of people don't think about. There's three main things I want to get across about NRDA. First, that the assessment really is restoration focused. The goal is to make the public whole for injuries from oil spills and associated response activities, and to make the public whole through restoration. So when we do our assessment and quantify injuries, it's the idea of balancing and scaling to the types of restoration to make up for that injury. Second point is damage assessment is cooperative, and what I mean by that is, first of all, we are required to invite the responsible parties to participate. So we think there's lots of benefits for that. For one thing, the participation helps ensure that we have a common data set that we're working from. We don't have competing data sets to the extent possible. There's usually a funding agreement or arrangement as part of it, because NRDA does have a polluter pays principle. Basically, the RP also then gets access to the data and can participate in the field in many cases. So for the cooperation is the co-trustees have to work together. And there's a public process through soliciting restoration projects, and when we produce a damage assessment restoration plan, there's a public process associated. So lastly, it's the legal process where we're required to show a causality or linkage between the release and the resource injury. And there's always the potential for litigation. That's not what we want, but it is possible, and so we have to be prepared for that in all our data activities. I am going to try to go very quickly. It's kind of a very busy. Any slide with lots of arrows is probably not very fun. But really, what I wanted to get at on the far left of this, hopefully you can see my cursor. The right box of it is basically what's in the Oil Pollution Act regulation. On the far left kind of boils down what we really do. And this is what we need to show is release, that the oil release, the pathways, where to go, how to get there. Exposure is how is your natural resource of concern being exposed, and what's the exposure pathway. And then injury is what are the effects, and further along, how do you quantify those effects to relate that to restoration. So that is, that was my 2-minute drill, although it's probably longer than 2 minutes. Excuse me, on natural resource damage assessment. We have whole days of trainings on that, so if you're ever interested, that's something there's training available. So, excuse me, the second part of my talk was just a few thoughts on considerations for marine mammal assessment. Normally when a lot of our damage assessments are looking at habitat effects for, maybe fish or invertebrate birds. But with marine mammals, we have a long-lived, slow-growing species. So it's possible some of the effects aren't being seen very quickly. So it's, so it takes some more thought for how we do the assessment. The logistics can be a challenge, especially we're in the Gulf of Mexico here with almost any mammal assessment is going to require boats or planes and a lot of expertise. I'm going to touch on the coordination response. Again, I'm so glad with what Liz and the stranding folks are doing with respect to response. That's really helpful. We try to work with response wherever possible in NRDA, and hopefully we can build our NRDA based on good data collected during response. Then I'm just going to touch on 2 more things from this. Is permitting, obviously. Restoration availability is always kind of hard for marine mammals. Is what is available for projects that we can to compensate the public for a marine mammal injury. And that's, Laura Engelby will be talking about that for Deepwater later. And then lastly, baseline conditions it's a challenge for all of NRDA, but this is something we definitely need to consider for marine mammals. Where baseline under NRDA is kind of the conditions set for a spill. It could be in comparison to pre-spill conditions. It does not mean pre-human condition. It just means pre-spill. Could mean comparison to the appropriate reference site. But the baseline has to do with, what's the, in this case of marine mammals, what's the population been doing that's where the spill. In some cases, we may not know that much about the population where the spill is happening. And the baseline also has to do with confounding factors and other hypotheses. So, for example, population may have some ongoing health and disease incidents. That does not mean we don't have that, we shouldn't pursue an NRDA. We just need to be aware of that. It could be there's an ongoing health problem that really takes them over the top because of the spill. So it's something to be aware of and factor into our NRDA. So, water horizon. There we go. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but this was obviously huge. 86 days, mile deep, huge, affecting 5 states, and affecting people and habitats across the Gulf. For the marine mammal part of the NRDA, as Liz mentioned on the response, they ramped up, and there was response, wildlife response during the NRDA. Some of that produced some helicopter surveys that we then turned into NRDA surveys later, as well as helicopter and twin otter surveys. So this map is just kind of a capture of the animals. This is not meant to be quantified or anything. This is just what was seen during the spill in the helicopter and twin otter surveys. So there's over 21 species. That includes several stocks of bottlenose dolphins, and ranging across the entire Gulf that was seen in the oil footprints. So then taking that and thinking about the routes of exposure, the one we were most concerned about was inhalation, vapors, aerosols, and droplets. Other routes of exposure would be incidental from water and sediments and prey, where there would be absorption, potentially, and aspiration. And then dermal exposure from the water column. So these animals are swimming through oil slicks. They did not avoid oil. They were swimming through it. They were feeding. They were resting in it, and throughout the 86 days. So this is kind of a snapshot of our NRDA, where the gray is the footprint. The blue line, this doesn't show the wellhead, but you can see my cursor right around there. The blue line is the 200-meter isobath. Past here is what we kind of delineated the oceanic marine mammals, including sperm whales and other whales, oceanic bottlenose dolphins, and other dolphinids. The purple line here is the 20-meter isobath. This is a shelf dolphin in the 20 to 200 meters. The orange to the purple is basically 0 to 20, and those would be coastal bottlenose dolphin stocks. Then each of these polygons are based on an estuary dolphin populations. These are not official stock boundaries. These were drawn for the purpose of the spill. And not shown on the map but off is Sarasota Bay, or is that Sarasota Bay? Sarasota Bay with Sarasota Bay, which was our reference population for health assessment. So in short, we're going to talk a lot about the basin and estuaries, but I did want to acknowledge that for the offshore species, some of the studies used were passive acoustic with harps and mirrors from Scripps and Cornell. There was some sperm whale tagging by Bruce Bates at Oregon State, some overflights for the shelf species. There were ship surveys and aerial surveys. And then the base count and estuaries where we got most of our injury data for the bottlenose dolphins. And specifically, back to my map, Barataria Bay, which was the most heavily oiled part, and secondarily the Mississippi Sound data, but almost all of it information came from Barataria. So very quickly, the approach for Barataria Bay and bottlenose dolphins were kind of a combination of live dolphin studies and dead dolphin studies. So live dolphin health assessment, which Ryan Takashita is going to talk about, so I'm not going to go into that more. Then there were more population and observational studies of photo ID over several years to get at survival rates, and together with health assessment, getting at reproductive outcomes. We can also get remote biopsies to get genetics and hormones and participant organic contaminants. The POPs would be help determine if there was some confounding factors. And then finally, the dead animals help get demographics of the population, growth observations, full histopath, as well as other kind of the confounding factors. We also got some age accounting. So skipping to what we found, the top here, kind of the live animal, and the bottom is the dead animal. You can't really read that very well, probably. But the short answer is we found some moderate to severe lung disease in the health assessment, impaired stress response, also in health assessment. These were both kind of corroborated from histopathology and the stranding. Increased mortality rates from the photo ID studies, also bolstered by stranding rates. And then low reproductive success found, and that was quite striking from the both health assessment and also corroborated in the stranding. So the bottom line is for the survival rate and based on the market capture models, this Barataria Bay in the far left has had an 80-85% survival rate, which sounds high, but it isn't. The baseline really is for Sarasota and other areas in the 95 to 96% annual survival. So that was quite a change for Barataria Bay. And the reproductive success for both Barataria Bay and Mississippi Sound kind of averaged out to 19%. Some of these numbers may be updated by subsequent health assessment studies, but these are based on what we did for the NRDA. Combined baseline reproductive success is 65%. So that's a huge effect that really affects the long-term recovery. So the next step of quantifying the impact was a challenge. Dolphins are long-lived while maturing. Just counting dead individuals in that year doesn't fully describe the impact. So we did a population model that considered the long-term impacts from individual losses and incorporating reproductive effects and slow population recovery. So Dr. Laurie Sullivan and a whole group of modelers did the modeling work, and essentially what this is showing is the blue is kind of the baseline population model based on what it should be looking at, like a baseline. The red takes into account survival and fecundity rate with and then projects recovery out. So it gets to what it comes, this area between the red and the blue line is the injury. And the unit would be lost cetacean years. And by her modeling, the recovery would be about 40 to 42 years. This is Barataria Bay. So for each other population, which may not have had site-specific data, we took baseline the best data we could get for that population and applied some of the observed survival and fecundity rates we saw here based on that species population and calculated it for all 21 or so species in the Gulf, and that was our injury quantification. The restoration side, Laura will hopefully talk about. We have publications, multiple publications. I'll have links that are in the presentation. If this talk is being shared, you'll be able to get the links. We also have all our publications are also on our website with all the papers downloadable. And then the damage assessment restoration plan is also, I have a link for that. Anyway, so what does this mean for the next bill? Not everything, the Deepwater horizons are hopefully very, very rare, and hopefully we'll never see again. But there are smaller spills. And this was a real eye-opener on the effects. So, but bringing an assessment of that magnitude is quite an endeavor that will have to weigh a lot of factors. What's the size of the spill? What's the type of oil? What are the logistics? Can you even get people out there? What do we know about the affected population? And what time horizon are we looking at? So as someone running an NRDA case will take all these things into account and what we want to bring to our assessment, and working with the marine mammal experts to see what the best way forward on these. So one of the things, what me and what I've been working on with a couple of other people is we're not providing SOPs that's not really very practical for NRDA. We have bills all over the country. Methods change. It'll change for each type of bill. But the concept of what kinds of tools that we have available, I think, are what we're really trying to get ourselves familiar with and know what we can get in place in different parts of the country. So we're still in the early stages of that. But what I just wanted to outline here, I'm not going to go more into conceptual models. That would be another talk. But if we have a spill, in your area, it's important to first sit down and map out that. What's the exposure? What's the pathway? What species are here? What do we think the effects are? Just think that through. It helps make us make a better case, make some better scientific decisions. But my second part on the assessment method is what some of us have gone through together with fisheries is what are, as other marine mammal experts, is what are the available assessment methods and tools that are currently available to us that we might apply. And I know I was sort of thinking broadly. And for each of these methods and tools, we ask kind of these 6 points of what are the contexts? Can we explain why this method is useful for NRDA and what the circumstances of use are? How the ML data considerations is how quickly you have to get out there. Baseline would have to do with, well, are there other studies out there? Do we know much about the technique that's going to give us the information we need? Other considerations, and this is huge, is cost, logistics, and also how long does it take to get your data back? I know that was kind of a problem with some of the acoustic methods, and it's not. I don't mean to pick on them. That's true for a lot of things. It takes a long time to get the data back, and that's something we need to know. Kind of get the expectations out there. Then lastly, the references and example applications. So these are some of the techniques that we've talked about. The ones I put in an arrow, don't put too much emphasis on this, but these are the ones that, in my opinion, this is not an official agency opinion, but these are things that we should think about getting out for most bills that would have a significant marine mammal effect. And that would be getting out there and get those photo ID studies. That's the second one. And get those started because it's hard to get those later. And and it's especially useful if you know something about you already have existing studies in the area. This first bullet on photographic and video documentation is basically just go out there, take good pictures that are georeferenced, that we have high quality data and data management for, because that is surprisingly hard to get good video and photographic documentation. After photo ID, remote biopsy can be is also useful for the genetic stock structure we've kind of done in concert with photo ID. And then aerial sample surveys, we would hope could be coordinated with the response. We can't count on that all the time, but we recognize that these surveys are important to get and start getting a quantification of what's out there and what's being observed. And lastly, grading response. That is still that really affects marine mammals. I expect there would be a wildlife response that's working it. If not, then possibly the NRDA needs to take this up. So I am not at all saying any of these things I didn't put red arrows on. Those are all important. I'm just talking about what you can maybe get out quickly. All these other things potentially have their places. You know, we have the caption release health assessment that was enormously useful for the Deepwater Horizon NRDA. What I'm interested in how this could apply to other populations, pinnipeds, and other areas that are not the Gulf Coast or Florida. That's all I have. I hope I didn't go over too much. Here's the links for our publication. There's a special edition of Endangered Species Research from 2016. That has a lot of our marine mammal work for EWH as well as a lot of the turtle work. And all the NRDA publications for EWH that we know of for EWH NRDA are on our website and now to be fully available. And then the programmatic damage assessment is also has a bunch of technical importance for us. I think that's all I have. Sorry if I went over.
Perfect, Laurie. Thank you very much. And we will follow up with all the participants to make sure they get access to those links and those resources that you've shared.
Okay.
Thank you. Round of applause for Laurie, please.